Ken Trahan with Lenny Vangilder. It's our first NBC Bank weekend preview brought to you by First NBC Bank with 32 locations throughout the greater New Orleans area and beyond. That's First NBC Bank, proud sponsor of SportsNola.com. The New Orleans Saints have broken training camp, and they've come home, the prodigal son, as it were. After being in beautiful West Virginia, as we heard many, many times, they're now back in beautiful New Orleans, at least in the New Orleans area. And, of course, they play their first preseason game Friday night against the Tennessee Titans. No Drew Brees, Lenny, and they really don't need to see him play at this point. I guess it will be interesting to see how they utilize quarterbacks, who gets to work with who, because it certainly appears that Ryan Griffin has momentum.
He does, based on that first preseason game. And, obviously, if Griffin is good enough to handle the number 2 quarterback and Sean Payton and staff feel confident enough, it's going to, in essence, save him a roster spot. You're not going to let Griffin try to pass through waivers to get to the practice squad and try to keep 3 quarterbacks that way. I don't think he would pass through waivers. So that being the case, if Griffin can truly handle it and shows it again, and as the course of the preseason goes on, you would have to think that Luke McCown's days are numbered. But obviously, he's a good veteran quarterback with experience, and he is there for a reason. So we'll see how this all plays out. But obviously, that is one of the key things to watch on Friday night, is you won't see Brees. Now, what's going to be interesting to me in the coming week is, assuming you start to see Brees, he's been doing a little bit more the last couple of days before they broke camp at the Greenbrier, gets back to practice next week, presumably. How much does he play against Indianapolis? Typically, your starters are going to play maybe first series of the third quarter, going that far, coming out after halftime. The one big dress rehearsal, being that he hasn't played the first 2 games, does that mean you play him less? Does that mean you play him more? That's going to be interesting in my mind to see just how much they think Brees needs to get in sync in a live situation with his offense.
The fact that Brees put pads on and actually threw a little bit in West Virginia before they left is encouraging. You got to think he's on track to be fine when they need him to be fine. John Jenkins getting back on the field, that's a positive as well. Ben Grubbs limited on the field, that's a positive. I guess the biggest concern right now from an injury perspective would be the long-term prognosis of a couple of guys. Eric Lorig, the guy they signed to play fullback, who clearly can't get on the field, and Champ Bailey, obviously.
Bailey, his biggest role in this thing, I mean, obviously they still think he's got some skills to be able to play in the league, but his biggest thing is from a leadership perspective, and he has been there. He's got skins on the wall and can be a veteran influence for some of these younger DBs, and he can still do that, within the locker room, whether he's on the field or not. But obviously you're not going to necessarily burn a roster spot on an unhealthy Champ Bailey. We saw some movement at the fullback position during the course of camp. That may tip off some things about what they think about what's going on with Lorig. But, again, these are the types of things that are going to play themselves out here over the last 3 preseason games. They don't have to make any cuts until, a week from Monday, and then get down to, your 53 the day after the final preseason game. So there's still some time to make those final evaluations, again, starting with Friday night against Tennessee.
And don't forget, former St. Michael Lewis will appear at the Saints Hall of Fame Museum to sign some autographs and take some pictures from 5 to 6:15 Friday night prior to the game. All ticket holders are admitted to the museum free, which is located at Gate B on the plaza level of the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. LSU and Tulane continuing to practice, getting ready for the season. Tulane, intra-squad scrimmage Saturday. Of course, they continue to work against each other. Defense better. And a workout on Wednesday, and that's certainly good news because their defensive front is a question mark. Rob Kelly still a question mark behind whether or not he'll be there and ready to go. They have running back depth, though, so it seems to be fine. Tanner Lee, the big news earlier this week at Tulane, being named starting quarterback, and no surprise there.
No surprise there. And they do have some depth at running back. Obviously, the experience would be, a key to be able to have there, and we'll see how the whole Kelly situation plays itself out. You mentioned the defensive front. That front 7 is going to be a key, because if they can hold up on their end, you've got an outstanding secondary back there with some really good athletes and some really good experience that can play, and a lot of these guys will have the chance to play at the next level, most notably Lorenzo Doss. So that's the kind of thing where the defense will be asked to hold its own again this year, especially with a freshman quarterback, and you're going to kind of ease your way into some things there. So it's going to be interesting to see early on just how that defensive front, a couple of key losses that they've got to replace there in Davenport and Wormsley, how some of those other guys, whether they be new guys or veteran guys, step up and replace those two.
At LSU, Les Miles continues to say the quarterback competition is undecided. He called it basically even, which is pretty interesting when you have Jennings and you have Harris, who hasn't played before. So Harris, I think, has a chance. I still think Jennings takes the first snap this year, but that they both play. And then otherwise, he said Leonard Fournette and Malachi Dupree were nicked. Of course, we're in a day and age where we don't know anything about injuries because they're not going to tell us.
No, they don't tell you. And, here's the thing on the quarterback situation at LSU. I think no matter which guy ends up on the field at any given point, and I think they will both play, and they will both play quite a bit, neither one is going to be asked to win the football game. When you've got the stable of running backs that you've got, and you've got the offensive line that you've got, and you've got some inexperience at wide receiver, to be honest, that tells me they're going to run the football. We've seen some hints during camp that maybe they're working a little bit more on the spread option and trying to incorporate some of those read plays out of the shotgun and stuff that you might see. We've seen from a lot of other schools. And honestly, with the quarterback talent set that you have and with the running back talent set you have, that makes a lot of sense. And those guys will do the right things to put them in positions to win games, starting with Wisconsin.
NBA schedule released. Of course, the Pelicans schedule part of that, and many highlights, of course. But Elfrid Payton coming home to play right away. The former John Ehret star will play at Smoothie King Center against the Pelicans. And, of course, from the Pelicans' perspective, some of the marquee teams will be coming here. As you might imagine, they'll play LeBron James in Cleveland very early on during the season. And speaking of James, the schedule makers did it. Gee, what a surprise. LeBron going to Miami on Christmas Day.
Yeah. Don't they always make that work out somehow with all of the key games on Christmas Day that you have? Some things that you notice in the schedule that are, I don't want to say concerning, but certainly not advantageous for the Pelicans. Of their 41 road games, about half of them are going to come in back-to-back road situations. That's not easy for NBA teams, not easy for any team, but you see it in the NBA, and it's not easy for those guys to have to go from one city to another city and play back-to-back games. You see the home road situation, or at least you start, when you're in your own bed, and then you get on a plane right after a game and you go play a game the next night. Those road back-to-backs are key, and having 10 of them in the course of a schedule, totaling 20 of your 41 road games, that's something to watch out for. And 5 of them come late in the year after March 1st.
Zephyrs have struggled a little bit of late. Lost on Wednesday, of course. They've been struggling overall of late, find themselves in last in their division, but still close enough, still with a chance.
You still have a chance. That's the beauty of it. It's a very tight race right now. You put it together for a couple of weeks. The only thing that's working against them, per se, is the lack of games against the teams in their division. But you know what? Everybody else is pretty much facing the same situation. They do have 5 more with Memphis that they got a chance to make up some ground on the Redbirds, but still they've got to deal with the other 2 teams without having to go head-to-head with them.
High school sports, of course, the football season fast approaching, and 20th year of Ken Trahan's original prep football report on WGSO on 10 stations statewide through SportsNoah.com televised. And we have a whole lot of prep material coming for you. Previews every day that you're reading, obviously. But in addition to that, you'll be getting some really good word on a nice television schedule of prep games, a nice radio schedule of prep games, Sports NOLA tied in. You won't want to miss it. All you got to do is go to SportsNoah.com. You'll know all about it.
Yeah, stay right here. A lot of big news coming on Friday. We'll have a lot of video content as well from head coaches all around the New Orleans area as they give us a chance to preview their seasons. They're into practice. We got scrimmages next week. We got jamborees in 2 weeks, and the regular season is just 3 weeks away in high school football. It's here.
It's a beautiful thing. Yes. Thanks, Lenny. Have a good weekend.
All right, we'll see you Monday.
That's our First NBC Bank weekend preview, brought to you by First NBC Bank with 32 locations throughout the greater New Orleans area and beyond. That's First NBC Bank, proud sponsor of SportsNola.com. For Lenny, I'm Kenny. Have a great weekend, and God bless you.